CEO's paralyzed daughter sat alone at the playground until a single dad said, "My daughter would love to play with you. It's her birthday today," and no one remembered. The woman's voice was soft, nearly lost beneath the rustling wind. From a distance, she watched the girl in the wheelchair, her phone pressed gently to her ear. There was a worried maternal softness in her eyes. Charlotte Blake sat alone at the far end of the neighborhood playground. Her back was straight, her expression unreadable. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting scattered shadows across the pavement. In her lap rested a small cupcake, its icing slightly melted. No candles, no balloons, no one else. She had turned 24 today. Her long golden hair was loosely braided over one shoulder. A cream cardigan hugged her frame, paired with a pale blue blouse and dark jeans. Her fingers curled gently around the paper plate holding the cupcake. Charlotte hadn't expected a party. Not anymore. But somewhere inside, she had still hoped for a message, a voice, a presence, something. For years ago, everything had changed. A bright, fearless college student, Charlotte had gone on a routine drive with her mother. Laughter, music. Then, the crash, the shattering silence. Her mother died instantly. Charlotte lived, but the feeling in her legs never returned. Her father, James Blake, CEO of Blake Tech, and the man who once danced with her in the kitchen, changed, too. The warmth vanished from his eyes. He buried himself in boardrooms and flights. He never said the words, but she felt it every day. He blamed her for living. Now Charlotte returned here. Every birthday, the playground where her mother once pushed her on swings, where laughter used to echo louder than the wind. This year, she brought her own cupcake. Because no one else would. A breeze lifted a strand of her hair. She looked down at the swirl of vanilla frosting. No candle, no wish, just quiet. Then hi. Charlotte looked up. A little girl stood a few feet away now. Older than 3, dressed in pink leggings and a yellow sundress dotted with tiny stars. A sun hat tilted on her head and a plush teddy bear dangled from one arm. The girl didn't stare, didn't hesitate at the wheelchair. "My name's Luna," she said. "I really, really want to play. My daddy said I can ask." Charlotte blinked, surprised. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Just then, a man approached from behind the girl. He looked to be in his early 30s. Tall, worn jeans, faded t-shirt, soft stubble along his jaw, handsome, but tired. The kind of tired that comes from years of carrying too much. "I'm so sorry," he said, gently, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "She saw you, sitting alone, and just, well, I told her to ask nicely." Charlotte looked at him, then at Luna, then down at the cupcake. A soft breath escaped. Something between a sigh and a laugh. "It's okay." Luna's face lit up. "Can we play now?" Charlotte hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I could use a friend. Today." The man's shoulders relaxed. "I'm Daniel," he offered Charlotte. With that, Luna popped down on the grass beside her, pulling out a small bag of colorful plastic blocks. "We're making a castle," she announced. Charlotte adjusted her chair closer, the motion smooth and practiced. She picked up a red block and handed it over. Daniel sat cross-legged nearby. "Not too close, not too far." "Castles, huh? Big ones with pancakes?" Luna said seriously. Daniel chuckled. Charlotte smiled wider than she had in weeks. They sat like that beneath the golden afternoon light. Two strangers, and a child building a tiny kingdom from scattered blocks. Charlotte's cupcake remained untouched on the bench behind her. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was waiting for someone to remember. She had been seen, and something small, quiet, but real was beginning to shift. Charlotte didn't expect to see them again. She told herself the moment at the playground was a one-time thing. A kind little girl and her thoughtful father just passing through. Nothing more. But 3 days later, as Charlotte sat, sketching in her favorite corner of Café Bellflower, she heard it. That's her. Daddy. She looked up. Luna was already halfway across the cafe, waving like she'd just seen a celebrity. Her rain boots squeaked on the floor. Charlotte blinked, surprised. The little girl stopped at the edge of her table, clutching a napkin. Hi again. Are you drawing? Charlotte smiled despite herself trying to. Seconds later, Daniel arrived. Slightly out of breath, cheeks flushed. I'm so sorry, he said, brushing his hair back. She remembered you. Charlotte looked at him. Navy hoodie. Jeans dusted with drywall powder, scuffed work boots. It's okay, she said softly. She's memorable. Luna pointed at the notebook. Can I see? Charlotte turned it toward her. An unfinished sketch of a tree and bench. Whoa, Luna whispered. You're like a real artist. Daniel chuckled. She's been into painters since watching a documentary on Monet. Only she calls him the puddle painter. Charlotte laughed. Just a breath, but it felt real. Luna grinned proudly. They only stayed a few minutes. Daniel bought a coffee to go, promising crayons at home. As the door closed behind them, Charlotte stared at the empty space they left behind, wondering why it felt quieter now. A week later, at the local supermarket, Charlotte maneuvered her wheelchair through the tea aisle. Daddy, it's her again. The princess drawer. Charlotte turned. Luna stood holding a loaf of bread like it was treasure. Daniel appeared seconds later. Her pushing a cart filled with milk, eggs, and diapers. Luna, he whispered inside. Voice, please, Charlotte smiled. It's okay. Luna ran to her. Can I buy you a cookie for your birthday? I didn't get to last time. Daniel caught up, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll have to check the budget, honey. Charlotte's throat tightened. His voice was warm, but weighed with quiet reality. She quickly replied, I'm actually here for tea and cookies. Maybe we can pick one out together. Luna lit up, grabbing Charlotte's hand briefly before switching to pointing. They picked out a soft-baked oatmeal raisin cookie. Daniel thanked her more than once. Later, Charlotte sat in her car, the cookie still untouched on her lap. She thought about Luna's open heart and Daniel's quiet steadiness. The third time was different. It had rained all morning. The park was nearly empty, but Charlotte came anyway. She liked the smell of wet earth, the sound of rain. She was about to turn back when she saw them. Daniel was spinning Luna under a gazebo, her yellow boots kicking water as she laughed. He caught her in his arms as she collapsed, giggling. Charlotte stopped, stunned. The image hit like a wave. Her father had once danced with her like that in the rain, in the kitchen, in the world before grief. She wheeled away quickly, breath shallow, retreating to a bench beneath the trees. Then she saw something across the field. An elderly woman was struggling with a plastic bag in the rain. Daniel approached without hesitation. He removed his coat, placed it gently over her shoulders, and handed her his umbrella. The woman patted his hand, misty-eyed. He just smiled and walked back to Luna, soaked but unfazed. Charlotte watched, eyes stinging. Her father used to be like that, too. Thoughtful, protective, before everything hardened. She hadn't realized. She was crying until she felt her hand tremble. The tears were sudden, but not unwelcome, not from pain, not entirely, from memory and recognition in a stranger, in a small girl who didn't care about wheelchairs, in a moment that felt somehow like it had found her. Charlotte stayed in the rain longer than planned. And when she left, she carried something with her. Not hope, not yet, but a question. Maybe this wasn't just coincidence. Charlotte began to notice it in small ways. The quiet consistency. Every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, Daniel and Luna showed up at the park around the same time she did. Sometimes they arrived just after her. Other times, they were already there. Luna waving like she'd been waiting all day. "Daddy says this is our Charlotte time," Luna said one day, hanging from a low monkey bar. "Because I told him you come when the sky is soft blue." Charlotte looked up. The sky was in fact soft blue. She glanced at Daniel, crouched nearby, tightening the wheel on a tricycle. He caught her gaze and offered a faint smile. "She's got a sixth sense," he said. Charlotte smiled. "Or maybe she's just very good at patterns." Over time, their park visits became something more. Daniel brought coffee, Luna brought drawings, and Charlotte brought grapes, which Luna devoured. They'd sit under the same tree, sharing snacks and stories, watching Luna build castles or chase butterflies. Charlotte didn't realize when those afternoons became the ones she most looked forward to. One particularly warm day, she struggled with a water bottle, twisting the cap with one hand while steadying her lap with the other. Daniel noticed without a word. He walked over, gently took the bottle, opened it, and handed it back. No comment, no pity, just a quiet gesture. Another time when her wheelchair wheel jammed in the gravel, he crouched without hesitation and fixed it, then stood brushing off his hands. Charlotte watched him. "Do you fix everything that easily?" "Only what I'm allowed to," he said, meeting her eyes. She didn't know how to answer. A week later, Luna came down with a fever. Daniel texted to say they wouldn't be at the park. Charlotte felt a pang of disappointment, then guilt. She baked cookies. At first, it was just something to do, but as the scent of cinnamon filled her apartment, she felt steadier. It reminded her of her mother, how she used to bake on rainy days, how warmth could exist in memory. Almost without thinking, Charlotte sent a message. "Is he feeling better?" Daniel replied, "Still warm." But she asked if the cookie lady would visit. She stared at the screen, then typed, "I have leftovers. Want to come by?" His reply came moments later. "We'd love to." It was the first time she'd invited anyone into her home in years. Daniel and Luna stepped inside with quiet curiosity. Pale yellow walls, art supplies on shelves, soft light, cozy and calm. Luna sat at the small dining table, hugging her stuffed bunny. Charlotte placed a plate of cookies in front of her. Still warm, Daniel removed his work boots near the door without being asked. They ate, laughed, drank tea. Later, with Luna asleep on the couch, Charlotte and Daniel stood side by side in the kitchen washing dishes. Charlotte passed him a bowl, and their fingers touched. Just a second. She froze. He didn't. He looked at her calm, warm, then reached for a towel. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For what?" he asked gently. You don't have to explain," he said. She glanced up. He was drying the bowl like nothing had happened, like he understood more than she could say. And somehow that made her chest ache in a way she didn't expect. After they left, Charlotte wheeled herself into her studio corner and opened her sketchbook. She began to draw from memory, not reference. She drew Daniel crouched in the grass, arms outstretched as Luna ran to him. His smile, his steady hands, the curve of Luna's curls against his chest, the warmth in his eyes. It was the first time in years she had drawn someone not out of habit, but because she wanted to. Remember how she felt. As her pencil moved, she realized something. Daniel had never asked her about the wheelchair. Not once. And still somehow, he was seeing all of her. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to hide. The night air was crisp and quiet. Outside Charlotte's apartment, leaves rustled gently. Inside, the kitchen light cast a soft glow over the small table where she and Daniel sat, 2 mugs of tea between them. Luna had fallen asleep hours ago after a day of painting and sidewalk chalk. She lay curled on the couch, a blanket pulled to her chin, the white noise machine humming beside her. Charlotte cradled her mug with both hands. Her fingers trembled faintly against the ceramic. Daniel didn't speak. He just waited. When she looked at him, she didn't see pity or curiosity. She saw someone who wasn't rushing her, someone who stayed. "It's never told anyone everything," she said softly. Daniel nodded. She set the mug down. It was raining that day, just a mist, really. I was 20, college. Sophomore. I had a migraine, and Mom insisted on driving me back to campus. Her voice caught. She took a slow breath. We were on Highway 63. A truck came too fast around the bend. We swerved, hit the guardrail. I remember her scream, then nothing. Daniel sat still, eyes steady on hers. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. Couldn't feel my legs. They told me she died instantly, that it was quick. Charlotte looked down, pulling at her cardigan sleeves. My dad was there when I woke up, but he didn't speak, just stared out the window. And when he finally looked at me, her voice faltered. It was like I was a stranger. Daniel didn't interrupt. I kept waiting for him to say, "It's not your fault," or "I'm glad you're alive." He never did. He just worked more, traveled more, and I stayed in this chair in this city alone. Daniel reached forward, placing his hand gently over hers. It wasn't forceful. It was grounding. Charlotte stared at their hands, her breath shaky. I always thought if I hadn't asked her to drive, if I just pushed through the headache, maybe she'd still be alive. Maybe he'd still love me. Daniel's grip tightened just slightly. "Charlotte," he said quietly, "you are not the reason she died." She didn't pull away. Her eyes welled, but she held his gaze. "And I don't think your father hates you," he continued. "I think he lost the person he loved most. And when that happens, sometimes people don't know how to love what's left." Charlotte blinked. A tear slipped free. "How do you know that?" Daniel looked down, silent for a long moment. "My wife's name was Natalie," he said. "She was a chef. We met in culinary school. We used to dance while pasta boiled." A soft smile tugged at his lips, but his jaw clenched. "She got sick when Luna was a baby. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. It happened so fast," he let out a breath. "After she died, I stopped cooking. Stopped everything. I drank too much. The house fell apart. I did too." Charlotte listened wide-eyed. "Hey, morning. I found Luna sitting on the kitchen floor trying to butter toast. She looked up and said, 'It's okay, Daddy. I feed you now.' She was 2. A pause. Then she saved me." Charlotte's throat tightened. She reached for her tea, mostly to steady her hand, but Daniel didn't move his. His hand stayed atop hers, real, warm, solid. "I don't know if my dad will ever say the words I needed," she whispered. "But for the first time, I think I understand him more than I want to admit." Daniel leaned slightly forward. Maybe he's not angry. Maybe he's just hurting. Sometimes pain makes people forget how to show love. Charlotte met his gaze. Her eyes were glassy but open. "Maybe," she said, quietly, and the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like healing. The afternoon was calm, almost deceptively so. The wind moved gently through the trees of the park, rustling the leaves and soft waves. Charlotte sat beneath their favorite tree. Luna sprawled out on the picnic blanket, drawing suns with purple crayons. Daniel was nearby, unpacking snacks from a worn tote bag. It felt like any other quiet, perfect moment until the sharp click of leather shoes on pavement broke the peace. Charlotte turned her head and froze. Her father was standing just beyond the pathway, dressed in a dark gray suit, polished shoes, and a look on his face that sent a chill straight through her. James Blake. Even from 10 yards away, his presence was commanding, cold, imposing. Charlotte slowly straightened her posture in her wheelchair, heart pounding. She hadn't seen him in person for months. Their conversations had dwindled to emotionless text updates about trust funds and quarterly health check-ins. Now here he was, eyes locked not on her, but on Daniel. Daniel, who had risen, instinctively, wiping his hands on his jeans, cautious but calm. Charlotte's voice cracked first. "Dad, what are you?" "I've been hearing things," James said, coolly, stepping forward. "About my daughter, the one I assumed was still focused on her recovery. Not." He glanced at Daniel, then at Luna, playing house in public parks. Daniel's jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. Charlotte inhaled sharply. "You don't get to show up after months and talk like that." James ignored her. His eyes remained on Daniel. "You're the man she's been spending time with." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." James folded his arms. "You fix air conditioners." "I do." "And you have a child." "I do." James paused. "Let me make this simple. My daughter is not some charity case. She is the sole heir to a billion-dollar enterprise. She requires stability, resources, medical attention. Not." He motioned dismissively toward Daniel. "Whatever this is." Charlotte's hands clenched the sides of her chair. "She needs a life built on security, not sentiment." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Charlotte raised a hand to stop him. Her voice was clear, sharper than it had ever been with her father. "No," she said. "I'll speak." James turned to her, surprised. Charlotte rolled forward a few feet until she was between the two men. "You think I need saving?" She said to her father. "That I'm still the broken girl in the hospital bed. The one who needs a full-time team and a PR shield and a silent life in a glass box so the Blake name doesn't look weak." James frowned. "That's not what it is," she cut in. "You've never looked at me the same since the accident. Not once. And now that I'm doing something, anything that you didn't plan, you think it's dangerous." James' jaw tightened. She turned slightly, gesturing to Daniel. "This man never once pied me. Never once looked at this chair before." He looked at me. Then softly, but with steel in her voice, she added, "You're scared. I'm fragile, Dad. But he's the one who saw strength in me when you never bothered to look." Silence. Even Luna paused in her drawing, sensing the shift in the air. James looked at his daughter for a long time, expression unreadable. "You're making a mistake," he said eventually quietly. "No," Charlotte replied, steady now. "I'm finally making a choice." Daniel stepped closer, not protectively, but supportively, grounded, quiet, present. James turned away without another word, walking back the way he came, shoes striking the pavement with mechanical precision. Charlotte didn't move until the sound faded completely. Only then did she let out a long, shaking breath. Daniel knelt beside her, resting a hand lightly on her arm. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered, because for once I didn't stay silent, and somehow, even with her heart still trembling, she felt lighter, like something long buried had finally been exhaled. The days that followed were unusually quiet. No texts, no surprise coffees, no shared afternoons beneath their favorite tree. Charlotte checked her phone more often than she cared to admit, telling herself it was just habit, that Daniel had work, or that Luna had caught another cold, or that maybe, just maybe, he needed space after what happened in the park. She told herself it made sense, but it didn't make it hurt any less. Daniel had vanished like a tide, pulling away without warning, and all she could do was sit in the silence he left behind. Across town, Daniel stared at his own phone, thumb hovering over Charlotte's name for what felt like hours each night. He'd replayed James Blake's words in his mind too many times to count. She needs care, not whatever this is. And maybe he was right. Daniel had no pedigree, no million-dollar resources, just calloused hands, a toolbox in the back of his truck, and a daughter he was still learning how to raise without falling apart. He couldn't ask Charlotte to choose between the life her family expected and the life she was building, not if it meant turning her into a battleground. So he stepped back, quietly, deliberately. He didn't realize how much Luna would notice. "Why isn't she coming anymore?" Luna asked on the third day. She sat cross-legged on the floor, teddy bear in one hand, staring at the door like Charlotte might walk through at any second. Daniel knelt beside her. "Sometimes people need time," he said gently. After Daniel departed, Sarah looked over at, "Did you make her sad?" Luna asked, his chest tightened. "I hope not." Luna nodded solemnly, then whispered, "I miss her. I miss her." Daniel did too, more than he had words for. Charlotte returned to the playground on a whim the following week. Same bench, same view, same cupcake. Small and undecorated, balanced on her lap. No one had remembered her birthday this year either. Not really. But unlike the last time, she didn't cry. She just sat breathing in the cool breeze, listening to the sound of children playing at a distance. The sun filtered softly through the trees. And then she heard footsteps, slow, familiar. She didn't turn right away. "Hey, Daniel's voice broke gently through the quiet. Charlotte looked up. He stood just a few feet away, his hair sled from wind. Eyes tired, but warm. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I wasn't sure I should," he admitted. She stared at him, unsure what to say. Daniel stepped closer, then slowly, deliberately lowered himself to one knee beside her wheelchair. "I thought staying away would make things easier for you," he said. "That maybe distance would protect you." He looked up, eyes meeting hers fully. "But today is the day. You were born, Charlotte, and I couldn't not be here for that." Her throat tightened. The cupcake on her lap trembled slightly in its paper wrapper. Daniel reached forward, gently resting a hand over hers. "You matter to me," he said. "Not because of what you can do or who your family is, but because when I'm near you, I remember who I want to be." Charlotte's eyes welled, but she didn't look away. Then slowly, Daniel leaned in and pressed the softest kiss to her forehead. A breath caught in her throat, and just as he pulled back, a small blur of motion came tumbling toward them. "Charlotte!" Luna squealed, arms outstretched. She wrapped herself around both of them, hugging Charlotte's waist and Daniel's shoulders in one clumsy, perfect embrace. And there, under the gentle sky, the three of them stayed, arms around each other, still silent and whole, in a way none of them had expected. Not flawless, not grand, just real and enough. James Blake was not the kind of man who lingered in public places. But there he was, standing across the street from the city's Central Garden, shielded behind tinted windows in the back seat of his town car, watching from a distance. His assistant had told him where to find her. He had expected quiet, solitude. The usual image of his daughter, composed but distant, elegant but unreachable. What he saw instead made him pause. Charlotte was laughing. It was not the polite, practiced smile he had grown used to seeing at charity events or board dinners. It was open, unguarded, real. She sat on a picnic blanket, her sketchbook open beside her, a smear of yellow paint on her wrist. Luna danced barefoot in the grass nearby, spinning in uneven circles. Daniel was beside Charlotte, shirt sleeves rolled up, holding 2 cups of lemonade and trying and failing not to spill them while laughing at something Luna had said. Charlotte leaned into him effortlessly, not to be helped, just to be close. James' fingers tightened around the headrest in front of him. He hadn't seen that light in her since before the accident, since before her mother. A pang of something deep and ancient pulled in his chest. "Pull over," he said. The driver hesitated, then obeyed. James stepped out into the sun, adjusting his jacket as he walked with careful precision toward the garden path. Charlotte looked up first. Her body stiffened instinctively. But she didn't flinch. She didn't hide. Daniel stood beside her, quietly protective, while Luna paused mid-spun to peer at the well-dressed stranger with wide, curious eyes. James approached slowly, his gaze not on Daniel this time, but on his daughter. When he stopped just a few feet away, his voice was not the commanding tone that once echoed through boardrooms. It was softer, older. "Charlotte," he said. "Dad." He looked at her, truly looked. And for a moment he didn't speak. Then, "Are you happy?" The question hung in the air. Charlotte swallowed. Her hand found the edge of her sketchbook. "Yes," she said quietly. "For the first time since Mom died." James blinked and something in his shoulders eased. He nodded once, then turned to Daniel. "Walk with me," he said. Daniel looked to Charlotte. She gave him a small nod. They walked a short distance down the path, the quiet between them layered with things unspoken. "I misjudged you," James said eventually, hands folded behind his back. "At first glance I saw a man with no pedigree, no access, just a pair of calloused hands and a little girl with grass-stained shoes." Daniel didn't respond. "But then I saw her," James continued. "My daughter smiling, breathing again, not just existing, living." He stopped walking. "I didn't lose her in that crash," he said. "But I lost her in the years after." Daniel met his eyes. "You didn't know how to hold the pain." James exhaled slowly, as if releasing something he'd held too long. "No," he admitted. "I didn't." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I've rewritten the succession plan," he said. "There's a portion of the company, one I intended to sell, dedicated to community outreach and small business development. I'm transferring it to you." Daniel stared at him, stunned. "Sir, this isn't a dowry," James interrupted. Firm, but not unkind. "And it's not about status. It's about the fact that you gave my daughter something I couldn't." His voice lowered. "You brought her back to herself." A silence passed between them. Then James offered a hand. Daniel hesitated and took it. As they walked back toward the blanket, Charlotte looked up, eyes searching. James offered a nod to his daughter. And, for the first time in 4 years, she smiled at him, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. She had not fought for her father's approval, but somehow, through love, not force, she had received his respect. The sun spilled golden light over the park where everything had begun. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, carrying laughter, music, and the faint scent of roses from a nearby garden bed. The same playground where Charlotte Blake had once sat alone on her birthday, cupcake in hand, silence wrapped around her like a second skin, was now alive with gentle celebration. Today it hosted her engagement party. There were no extravagant flower arches or tuxedoed servers, just picnic blankets, foldable chairs, a string of lights draped between 2 trees, and people who mattered. There were 2 husbands. Daniel stood in a simple button-up, Luna perched proudly on his hip, her dress dotted with tiny stars. Charlotte sat beside them in her wheelchair, her golden hair braided loosely to the side, a soft smile blooming as if spring had moved in behind her ribs. Luna squirmed down and tugged at something behind her. Back. I made this, she said, presenting a delicate bracelet made of bright beads and elastic string. It's for you, Charlotte blinked. For me? Luna nodded solemnly. For my new mommy. Charlotte's hand trembled as she took the bracelet. It was imperfect. One bead was too big, another slightly cracked, but it was more precious than any diamond. She slipped it on, tears blurring her vision. Thank you, Luna. I'll wear it always. James Blake watched. From nearby, hands clasped behind his back. He wore no suit jacket today, just a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked older in the soft light, more human. He approached slowly. For a moment, no one spoke. Then James knelt beside his daughter and pulled her gently into his arms. It was not grand, not performative, just a quiet, firm embrace, the kind that says everything. Without a single word, Charlotte closed her eyes, resting her chin on his shoulder. It felt like a puzzle piece, sliding into place. Later that evening, as the sky shifted to lavender and the fairy lights began to glow, Charlotte wheeled herself over to a nearby easel, covered with a cloth. Before the day ends, she said, clearing her throat, I want to share something. Everyone quieted. She lifted the cloth. The painting revealed was soft and vivid. A wheelchair sat in the foreground, its wheels catching a hint of sunlight. Behind it stood two figures, one tall, one just a little shorter, hands on the handles, pushing together. In front of them, a little girl, arms wide, mouth open in laughter, running forward like she owned the wind. Below the painting, written in careful script, were the words, "Family isn't built by blood. It's built by those who stay." Silence fell. Not the kind born of discomfort, but the sacred kind, the kind that settles over hearts when they recognize truth. Daniel reached for Charlotte's hand. James placed a steadying one on her shoulder. Luna pressed her head against her side. And in that moment, under the same trees where once sat a lonely girl with a cupcake, a family was born. Not through legacy or contracts, but through love that stayed, healed, and chose. Always. Thank you for joining Charlotte's journey, a story of healing, love, and chosen family. If it touched your heart, don't let this be the last chapter. Subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more tales of resilience and quiet courage. And if Charlotte, Daniel, and little Luna moved you, tap that high button to support stories that remind us you are never too broken to begin again. Until next time, stay gentle, stay brave, and keep believing in love.